Bad Batch theme. Just put together for the Credible Nerds podcast. And just trying to figure things out. If you notice, we do have an upgrade from our last episode. Put a little graphic together to make it more interesting. Got a theme song going on. And we're ready to get going with Bad Batch episode 5 review of Rampage. And my name is Justin, and I have my fellow clone with me, Aiden.
Hey guys.
And we're ready to get going with this new episode and talk about it. Last episode we talked about Fennec Shand, even though I don't think we knew her name at the time, but at least, well, we knew it, but the clones didn't know who that was. And that's the premise for this episode, is who is this bounty hunter? She almost kidnapped Omega. What's going on? Who's paying her bounty? Who's behind it all, I guess. So first they need to find out who it is. And we get a little more info in this episode with episode 5. So we'll start off with the crew. They're on their way to Ord Mantell. They need to contact someone who the Jedi knew, who had information that the Jedi would use to gather that secretive intel, and that person is Sid, and she lives on Ord Mantell. And so they're on their way. They're in hyperspace going there, and we get a little scene with Omega. They give her her own comm device, and I think that's kind of a result of last episode as well, kind of what we saw there with her getting lost and stuff. So
yeah, and it's kind of a step forward in her being actually part of the Bad Batch, which is something that's kind of been, I guess, a theme in the past episodes, where she's in the with the Bad Batch, but not really part of it. She just kind of got stuck with them, but now they're kind of accepting that she's going to be there for at least a little bit. Yeah, and they want to keep her safe, so they give her like a way to communicate with them. So if she gets kidnapped or lost, they can use her comlink. Mm-hmm. And she plays around with it a bit, and Hunter and the crew are a little daddish about it, like, that's not a toy, don't do that. And she's using it, exploring it, and having fun with it. So but they come out of hyperspace. So this is the first time we see Ord Mantell, I believe, in, I don't know, live action or animated form. I'm sure it's been in the comics and the games and stuff, but this is the first time we actually go there, I believe. So they land, they track down where this Sid is supposed to be. It's in a cantina. It's a nice little place for the seedy, secretive type to hang out in, is the cantinas. I love going to the cantinas in Star Wars. They're always good, for the most part, unless you're on Canto Bight. I don't know. That's more of a casino than cantina. But yeah, that's Vegas, right?
Yeah, that's Vegas. High rollers and stuff. So this is a little less glitzy and all that. So they go in. They see someone working on some machines. They ask, hey, is Sid here? They don't know who Sid is. And they comment, it'd be nice to know who she or he looks like when we're trying to find out this person is. And this person's like, no, don't know who Sid is. Never heard of her. And goes about her business. They're trying to figure it out. And Omega, she realizes who it is, who Sid is. And
yeah,
she points it out to him. Hey, this person you just asked, that's Sid. What'd you think about Sid? And kind of, Sid's a female. I don't know what race or alien.
Trandoshan.
I
didn't realize that the entire first time I watched it, and then this episode I was like, oh my gosh, she's a Trandoshan. Yeah. But you would never guess, because usually Trandoshans always talk like they're snakes. They always slur their S's and accentuate them. But she doesn't do that. But I noticed because of how her head is shaped. Yeah. Because usually Trandoshans are also taller and not usually fat like Sid is, but
and she was green, right?
She was green.
Most of them are yellow, at least like Bosk, or yellow orangish colors, I guess.
Yeah, I know they have a lot of them in Star Wars Galaxies, the online game. You can make your own character, and for Trandoshans they have pretty much they've got blue, gray, orange, green, yellow.
Okay.
So it's
all kinds of colors.
Yeah. And I think you do see green ones in the Clone Wars, specifically the arc where, I can't remember, but Ahsoka goes to Kashyyyk and talks with all the Wookiees, and they're getting hunted by
The Trandoshans.
I think that episode is called Hunted.
Yeah, I think they're even red ones too.
Okay. Yeah, so Trandoshan, good to know. She's a little feisty. I like it.
Yeah, definitely the type of person you'd think that she is.
Yeah.
As you see in the rest of this series.
Yeah. But she does comment that her business has declined since this new empire started. So, and the cantina is pretty sparse. There's only 2 guys in there, 2 aliens in there. They're always fighting every time they show up. They're always, I don't know, getting drunk, I guess, or
just kind of low life.
Mantell. Yeah. They're the regulars.
Yeah.
The norms that frequent that place. So they're there, and they ask about, can you help us out? Can you give us some intel? And she's like, well, what can you do for me? What's in it for me type thing. And so they kind of come up with an agreement that, hey, I'll get you this intel, this information you want about this bounty hunter that they encountered on Pantora. And then if you do this job for me, I'll let you know what I found out. So the job is to rescue Moochie from some Zygerrian slave traders.
And all we know about Moochie at this point is that she's a child.
So, she does say the child Moochie.
Yeah. And that's all they know. And they go to the planet and they have to save her from the slaves.
Yeah.
Or the slave traders.
And that they'll split the bounty 70-30 with Sid getting most of the proceeds.
Of course.
Which I thought was a little unfair because they're doing all the work. But that's her business, I guess.
Yep,
business model.
She's got the info, I guess, so that's their payment for it.
Yeah. Okay. So they head off to the base of the Zygerrians. It's this abandoned or rundown, bombed out remains of a city, is what it looks like from the war. They're living there. They have some people, some aliens that they've captured already and have in chains, and they're looking to get them off world to sell them as slaves. And so the clones roll up and they're looking through their what are those? They're not binoculars. They're macro binoculars. That's right. And they see like some adults, and they see a kid there, and they're like, "Oh, there's Moochie. Oh, poor Moochie. She looks terrible, and
she's scared.
She's scared." Yeah. So they assume there's Moochie right there. They got to save him. So they send Omega back to the ship. Say, "We're gonna handle this. You go wait in the ship," type thing. And they go down there, and they come up with this plan. Okay, Echo, you go up high. Tech, you go over here. Or no, Wrecker, you go over here. Me and Tech will go check it out. But then they immediately get captured by the slavers.
Yeah.
So
it's like they knew they were there.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of their job, is to know where people are so they can trade them.
Yep. Track people down. So the mission wasn't very successful. And these are the same species or people, I guess, from the Clone Wars, the Zygerrians that we saw in the Clone Wars.
Yeah. There was a whole arc in the Clone Wars where Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, they all go to the planet, I forget what it's called, but where the Zygerrian slave traders are, and they go and try and infiltrate them and kind of see what's going on, because at the time the slave trade is illegal because of the Republic, and they get rumor that it is still going on there. And it's not open like to everybody in the Clone Wars. It's kind of underground, so they infiltrate it and basically just catch them in the act.
Yeah, and stop it. So they've moved off that planet because of their business got shut down, basically. And I don't know if this is their only place, but they're here on this planet, Ord Mantell. And so we were first introduced to the laser whip, I think, with the Zygerrian slave traders.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, which is a cool weapon. And the main guy in charge of this group has one. So that's pretty cool that they brought that back. I always liked that. So, they're captured. They're chained up. They're getting ready to move them all off world and sell them. And it's up to Omega. The slave traders, they go and find the ship that the clones arrived in. They're looking around, and Omega's in there. She realizes something's wrong, and so she's able to escape from those guys and do some recon of her own. So she tracks down the clones where they're at and sees that they're being held prisoner. And she's sneaking around trying to find a way to figure it out to get them loose. And I think Echo was the one that was like, or maybe Tech. It's like, if we really had our gear, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So what goes on there is they're like, we need to find a way to signal Omega to get her over here.
Yeah.
But then Echo is like, I don't think we're gonna need to, because she's already there. They see her up in the corner, and Echo yells out really loudly, like, "Hey, you wouldn't stand a chance if we had our gear." And then she's like, "Oh, I need to get their gear."
Yeah.
So she tries to do that, and she slides down this thing and kicks a rock down. They're like, "Oh, what's that?"
Yeah.
And then Wrecker, he kicks a rock to kind of cover her tracks, and she falls onto this cage and sees a baby Rancor in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Oh, this is perfect. This is what I'm going to use to get them out."
Yeah. So she's looking at it, trying to figure out how to open it, and then she gets caught by the Zygerrians. But then we realized she had pulled the key, and all of a sudden the baby Rancor bursts out of it and starts wrecking havoc, and everybody's like running around. And it distracts them long enough that that Wrecker's able to break the chains that they're being held on and get out of that situation. And they are able to grab their gear and free the other slaves that were there. So the distraction works, but it's a pretty chaotic situation. And Omega and Echo take the slaves and head back to their ship to get them to be able to escape. And the rest of them go track down the Rancor to make sure that, they're able to have enough time to escape. And in the meantime, the head Zygerrian with the whip, there's this dragon creature. I don't know if we've seen that before.
We have in the Clone Wars.
It looked familiar, but I don't remember much about it.
Yeah. All I know is that the Zygerrians used them in the Clone Wars.
Okay.
And it's the same thing. But one thing was that while they were getting the slaves back to the ship, they talked to the kid and they're like, "Hey, we're going to free you, Moochie."
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, "That's not Moochie."
Yeah.
That's Moochie. And they're pointing to the Rancor. And they're like, "Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's the mission, is to get the Rancor back."
Yeah, so the mission got infinitely harder at that point.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Oh no, that's Moochie." So they gotta go track down Moochie and make sure they are able to get him back to Sid. So with the Zygerrian slave trader, the head one, he jumps on that dragon, thinking the flying dragon, and is trying to attack the clones as well as get Moochie back into her cage, I guess. And Moochie's not having it. She's fighting back. She bites the dragon's tail, and the slave trader falls off. And so the dragon and Moochie are fighting, and Moochie ends up beating it, overcoming it, and it flies away because it doesn't want to get killed.
Yeah.
And then Hunter and the head slave trader, they start to duel and fight each other, and Hunter's able to overcome him, and he has the laser whip wrapped around his arm, but he's able to fight it off and punch him in the face and knock him out.
Yeah, and something about that scene is, I think the same exact thing happens in the Clone Wars with, I can't remember if it's Obi-Wan or Anakin, but the laser whip gets wrapped around their arm. They're like, "Oh no," and they try and pull, but then they get shocked, and then they're like kind of dying for a second, and then they're like, then they get the strength to just like overcome the electricity that's going through them, and then they rip it out. I might be making stuff up, but
that's what you remember anyway.
I think that was in the Clone Wars with either of them, and the same thing happens.
Okay. So that's interesting. So Hunter has the same durability or strength as a Jedi, at least in that aspect. That's what they're insinuating, because that's pretty, if that's what you remember, that's accurate. It's a pretty direct correlation there.
Yeah. I mean, the scene looked pretty familiar to me, and it would make sense because Hunter's an altered clone. He's enhanced.
Yeah.
So that would make sense.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that when we review that episode in the Clone Wars when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
So see how that compares. But yeah, he's able to overcome him. He's out of the game. And Moochie's kind of wrecking havoc with the other slave traders. Kills a couple, actually. We don't see him die on screen, but yeah, one falls off this like 3-story building onto some rocks. So.
Yeah, so he's done.
He's done. But we don't see the grisly outcome. Just, so it's a precarious situation there. And so it's just Moochie and the clones. They got to figure out how to overcome him. And Tech does his thing to save the day, gives them the information, looks up in his database, his HoloNet database, I guess. Whatever the equivalent for Wikipedia is in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Is able to pull up that info and finds out that the Rancors are, if you're able to challenge them and beat them, then they're subservient to the person who won, like whoever's the strongest type thing. So Wrecker's like, okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And he jumps in, they start fighting. Wrecker's actually punching him. Moochie is a smaller Rancor, baby Rancor, so they're about the same height. Moochie's a little taller, but they're able to basically have a boxing match.
Yeah, she's definitely way bigger than him.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a full-size Rancor bigger, but Wrecker's also the enhanced clone. He's a bigger clone, but he's got just as much strength as Moochie does.
Yeah. So they're fighting, and it cuts away to Omega and Echo getting the captured people who are going to be sold as slaves, get them on a speeder bike and get them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that sequence, something important, Omega finds a laser bow just laying around discarded. I guess the Zygerrians were using it. So she picks it up, and that's her weapon from now on in the series.
Yeah, you'll see that in pretty much every episode from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I guess that's her unique trait besides her being a kid and a girl clone, but that's her thing.
Mm-hmm. Is being able to use weapons good?
Yeah, well, just that unique weapon. It's not a clone weapon.
Right.
And then I guess also, like, Crosshair had his sniper, and Tech has his dual blasters. Hunter has his knife on his arm, and Wrecker's got his Republic Commando. It's like the interchangeable blaster, and then also the vibro, like, machete.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess Echo just has his pistol, but he's got his arm.
Yeah.
So that's his thing.
Yeah.
But now she has her cool weapon, unique weapon that's not really commonly used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a good choice. So she's becoming more part of the team. She's got a comlink. She's got a weapon.
Yeah, she's in it now.
She
just needs her armor.
Yeah. I saw this thing online somewhere, probably one of the Facebook groups that I'm in. It talked about how pointed out that maybe Omega, like we always think them, like they're all related, they're all brothers, and she's a sister, but maybe she's the mother of the clones because, she saw them grow up. So in some sense she is, in the sense that she cared for him on some level, cared for them on some level while they were growing, but maybe she's like biologically their mother.
Maybe. I also saw something kind of similar to that where, Boba is the alpha clone, and then Omega is the Omega clone.
Yeah, alpha and the Omega, beginning and the end.
Yeah, so maybe she was the, like, I guess, last iteration of the DNA. Maybe not the last, like, clone made, but she was the final form, I guess.
Before the DNA strands started to deteriorate or not be as usable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the kind of the full strength clone, I guess, that they could use for creating more.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Boba was the original, and then from there they made all the ones we see, and then she was the last one, and they used her DNA to start making these altered special specific clones.
Yeah, I don't know if it went that far, but I could definitely see that.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure that's something they're keeping close to the vest in the show as far as who she is in the sense of her role in all of this. She's definitely different, obviously because she's female, but there's, she's kind of like Boba in the sense that doesn't have that growth enhancement where she ages twice as fast. So there's that part too.
Yeah, because she's older than them, but she's also like
10.
Yeah. Yeah.
12 or whatever. And they're in their late 20s or 30s. So.
At least mentally.
Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, something to think about. We'll see how it goes next season. Season 2 comes out later this year. So we'll be on top of that, watching that along with everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
So they are able to subdue Moochie with Wrecker. They go back, they cut back to the Moochie and Wrecker fight. And they're just exhausted, kind of barely able to swing at each other and punching each other. And Moochie falls down and Wrecker falls on top of him. Just completely exhausted. Therefore, Wrecker is the dominant one. Because he lasted half a second longer.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're able to get Moochie back to Sid's place. And right before then, we have a cameo, I guess, of Bib Fortuna showing up. He's the client. Probably Jabba. Jabba's the client, and he sends Bib Fortuna to collect and pick up Moochie and pay off Sid.
Yeah, and the speculation from there is that, Moochie is the Rancor that we see in Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And that's her origin story there, but that's not confirmed, so don't quote us on that.
Yeah.
Until it's confirmed, then we're right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought initially. I was like, okay, the Rancor we saw in Return of the Jedi is Moochie, which in some ways is cool, but then in other ways you're like, well, Moochie dies.
Yeah, bummer.
Now we had this connection with her. We saw her origin story, and now she's dead at the end. But yeah, she's a Rancor. But so maybe it is. I think it is. Yeah, until proven otherwise.
I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so there's two things. Oh, we'll get to that in a second. So, Bib Fortuna, they take Moochie and head out, and Omega says bye. Kind of like, oh, I will miss you, but it's okay. Where's our money?
Yeah.
And Sid pulls in Hunter into the back office and is like, okay, this is what I found out. The bounty hunter is called, her name is Fennec Shand. And Fennec Shand is something we knew before the show. So the audience knew who it was last episode when we first saw her. But this is the first time.
In The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
The whole thing there.
Yeah. So this is the first time that the clones find out who it is. And Sid's like, I wonder why a bounty hunter's after you guys. That's interesting. Who would pay money for her to go after you guys, and kind of threatening her under the table in a roundabout way,
Yeah.
Don't throw me under the bus and I won't do the same to you.
Yeah. She mentions that she's good with secrets, which is probably why the Jedi went to her, because if the Separatists found out she was working with the Jedi,
that'd be it for her.
Yeah.
So a couple things that came up to mind as watching this, because this came out last year along after Mandalorian season 2. Yeah. And then right before Boba Fett's Book of Boba Fett. And at this point, Book of Boba Fett is done. There were two things that, Fennec Shand is in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, as well as in this. We have a baby Rancor in this, and then a Rancor in Book of Boba Fett. So I did find myself kind of like mixing the timeline.
Yeah.
And having to really, okay, no, we haven't. This is the first time we see her, right? But, we saw her in Mandalorian already. So a little confusing there.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I mentioned to you this while we were watching watching it. But Sid mentions that she's super new to the bounty hunting scene, and I'm like, what? No, she's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And I realized this is right after Revenge of the Sith, and that's Mandalorian's right after Return of the Jedi, which is kind of cool. We see her as she's emerging and getting her name out there, and then in The Mandalorian, she's like one of the most notorious.
Kind of see where she's at after the Empire's been destroyed. So, yeah, what do you think about that duality that's
hey, here's the origin stories of these guys, Fennec Shand, and maybe the Rancor that we see in Return of the Jedi. But then we also see another Rancor in Book of Boba Fett. That's not, I don't believe, is Moochie. Maybe Moochie moved around, and then these twin Hutts brought Moochie back to, I don't know. There was just some.
I don't think it's
crossover.
Moochie, because I think she'd have to be an adult by now, and that Rancor was still young.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of smaller.
Yeah. But along with that, George Lucas said about Star Wars, I think when he was making the prequels, is that Star Wars rhymes.
Mm-hmm. There's a rhyme to it.
So I think that's why we see a lot, either re-emerging characters, returning characters, or just returning themes, like how the sequels are really similar to the original trilogy, and just how we see a lot of repeating patterns in Star Wars. This is kind of the same thing, where we see Fennec and her origin story, and then maybe Moochie, but at least a Rancor, a young Rancor, and just lots of little things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like it. I mean, I like shows that challenge you and make you think about, okay, where does this fit in the timeline, and who are these guys? You know, so I don't have a problem with it. Just maybe for the general audience who's a casual fan, which we do podcast for the casual nerd, so I wanted to bring that up. You know, is it confusing for the casual fan? Maybe. If us hardcore fans, long-term fans, are like having to actively, okay, this is before we see her in Mandalorian, you know? So,
Yeah.
Anyways, so possibly. But I doubt the casual fans are watching Bad Batch.
Yeah.
At least not many.
Uh-huh.
So, all right. So one of the big things that we're introduced to in this show, in this episode, that we see for the next few episodes is Sid. Do we like her as a character, as being the facilitator for the Bad Batch to, you know, earn money to survive and kind of move on to the next level and have more adventures based on what she offers to the story?
Yeah, well, she brings a lot of opportunity for the Bad Batch, and the way the show has gone so far, it's kind of aimless, so I think she's necessary at this point, or someone like her is necessary, because they need something to do, they need a goal, and this is how they get to their goal. They need money, they need stuff to do, they need information, and that's how they get it.
Yeah.
It's through Sid. So I guess we don't necessarily have to like her, but we have to like her role.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good introduction, a good facilitator of story elements that'll come forward, that we'll see later. So I like her. I think she's voiced by Rhea Perlman, who, if you grew up in the 80s like I did, you saw her on TV as in the show Cheers, which was a bar show where people would go and hang out and they'd talk and just do stuff. It was a hangout place. So she was a server in that bar, and she was very feisty in that. So it's kind of a Star Wars version of that character that we saw in Cheers. So
yeah, I guess she does have her bar, and she kind of runs that place. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that because I was born in this century.
After this, in this millennium.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for the old fans, it's like, oh yeah, there's a connection there. For the new fans, it's an introduction to a fun character. But yeah, so it's interesting add to the story. I like it. And we see her more in the next episodes, so it'll be good. I wonder if she'll be in the next season.
Yeah, I imagine she would.
Yeah.
This season, spoiler, kind of ends pretty drastically, so I guess we'll see. But I don't think we wouldn't. There wasn't really like a goodbye to her or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they may get back to her.
Yeah, I would like to see her because, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So we want to thank you guys for joining us with the Credible Owners podcast with the Bad Batch review show. And you can catch our previous episodes. Our previous one before this was a video podcast, Pretty Bare Bones. That was actually our first video podcast. So be patient with it. More episodes are going to be like this one.
and we'll keep fine-tuning the process. The first few episodes were just audio podcast only, so check those out on our website, crediblenerds.com. Just do a search for the podcast page, and you'll find all our podcast episodes along with those previous Bad Batch episodes. So we want to thank you guys for joining us here on this episode, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.